What is going on, everybody? It is Monday morning, dark and early. I just survived the school drop-off lane and I pulled over and I parked here because it is time for us to jump into another episode of the Monday Morning Pastor. Every Monday I just jump on here to share just a little bit of wisdom and some experiences I've had as being a pastor, and not just necessarily the things I learn on Sunday mornings while I'm preaching, but the things you learn the rest of the week. And particularly today I want to talk about one of the earliest lessons I've learned in ministry. I'll never forget when I first started ministry. I was interning at a church in Indiana, and I was there by myself that day, and a family came into the church and they needed some help. They needed some resources. The church I was at the time had a food pantry, and so they wanted some food from the food pantry, but I didn't have access to it. So I had to call one of the other pastors and say, hey, can you come to the church? There's a family here in need. And the other pastor, I'll never forget it, said, I'm doing something right now, but I'll be there once this gets done. And I thought that was so egregious. Like, I thought, well, how could you finish your thing? Why wouldn't you rush over here right now? Because this family needs their baked beans. And, a little bit of time went by and I was talking with the family and they were fine to wait. And when the pastor came, he opened it up and they were grateful for the help that they got. And the family went on their way. And I remember I asked the pastor, I was like, I kind of pressed him on it. I was like, why wouldn't you just come over here right away? These people were in need. And I'll never forget what the pastor told me. And it's so true. He says, Brad, you're new to ministry. Here's what you're going to realize as you stay in ministry. There's always someone in need. That wasn't his opinion. That's literally what Jesus says. In the Bible, in Matthew chapter 26, verse 11, Jesus says, the poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. He says this again in Mark and a couple other times in the Bible, but what Jesus is saying is this, he's not trying to shame people for being poor. That's not it at all. But what he's saying is the only consistent thing in life is inconsistency. And everybody, all of us, have moments where our life is great and wonderful, and we have moments where our lives are a struggle and it's hard to get by. And when you're in a church, in a congregation, there's always someone in need, and it always cycles through. And so when you're in a church, there is just a constant need of people that you as pastors and as a congregation, you need to be prepared to help. And what the pastor told me is like, Brad, if you want to stay in ministry for a long time, what you have to realize is this. As a pastor, you have a responsibility to people, but not a responsibility for people. And you need to help people, but you need to help people out of the overflow of your health. Because if you help people to the point of your detriment, then it's kind of like when you're on an airplane and you don't put your mask on first, then you won't be any good to help anyone else. So he said, that's why I needed to finish up what I was doing to show honor to my family and to show honor to the people around me. But I cared for these people and I came over as soon as I could, but I needed to make sure that I was healthy and my situation was healthy, so then I could meet their needs to the best of my ability. I heard that lesson that day. I learned that lesson probably throughout that year, and now I live that lesson out in my ministry. If you're not winning at home, you're not winning in ministry. Love your family, you love God first, love your family second, and then love your church well after that, and then your community. And so that's the lesson I learned early on in ministry. That's the lesson I want to pass on to you. There's always going to be someone in need, and you need to help those people and have a heart for those people. But we also need to make sure that we are healthy people ourselves, and that we're fed spiritually, and we're healthy physically, and that we serve people with a heart of love.